Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, the Florida high school shooting.
Bullets came in that classroom.
My teacher came back and there was blood all over her clothes.
They were witnesses to the nightmare.
This guy was here to kill people. This was life or death.
There's no words to describe the feeling, never seeing your friends again.
Joaquin was my student. I'm just so angry.
Plus,
It's been nearly 19 years since shots rang out at Columbine High School.
survivors of the Columbine massacre speak to the Parkland students.
I was your age when I went through my shooting. No one should ever have to go through this.
If you had advice for these survivors, what would it be?
It's a journey that you're going to go through for the rest of your life, and I'm so sorry.
This has to stop. Something has to be done. It's become all too common. Images of frantic students and faculty fleeing schools with their hands in the air or cowering in classrooms trying to escape a violent school shooter. Tragically, last week was no different at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, when authorities say accused gunman Nicholas Cruz entered the school he had been expelled from and opened fire on his former classmates and teachers with an AR-15 assault rifle. When it was over, 17 lie dead, and what was once named Florida's safest city will be known for now as the site of the third worst school shooting in U.S. history. Yesterday, in part one of our two-part special, we talked to people who knew Nicholas Cruz. We discussed the warning signs that were ignored, what could have been done, and why, despite many red flags, no one at the school, the FBI, or local law enforcement stepped up. In the past 52 days, there have been an astounding 17 school shootings. And in the past 5 years, there have been nearly 300 times when parents have sent their children off to school believing they will be safe, only to learn that their lives have been put at risk by a shooter on the loose.
Two students wearing long black trench coats opened fire on classmates yesterday morning.
He's shooting in the library right now.
A tragedy of monumental proportions. That's how the president of Virginia Tech described the horror that unfolded there. The deadliest mass shooting in American history. A gunman opened fire, killing at least 31 people.
A man armed with at least 2 handguns opened fire at about 9:30 this morning in the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut.
I saw some of the bullets going past the hall that I was right next to.
A gunman went on a mass shooting near UC Santa Barbara.
They say Elliot Roger, the shooter, was simply driving up and down the streets of Isla Vista, opening fire, randomly shooting people.
A gunman forced his way into an Amish schoolhouse. 10 girls were held hostage. 5 of them were shot and killed.
Tragedy in western Kentucky. 2 students are dead, several others injured.
Shots fired, 4 down at the high school at Marshall.
Community members all across Aztec are still struggling to understand exactly what happened yesterday.
He disguised himself as a student to sneak into Aztec High School with a gun and kill 2 teenagers at random.
The 19-year-old under arrest for one of the worst school shootings in U.S. history appeared before a judge today, officially charged in the Valentine's Day deaths of 17 people.
Police say the gunman started his rampage outside the school, then went inside and fired more shots.
Oh my God!
Nicholas Cruz is charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder.
Well, joining me here on stage are Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School students Morgan, Lauren, and her older brother David. We're also being joined by a group of students via satellite from Parkland, Florida. I want to start by talking to you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm glad to meet you, but I'm really sorry for the occasion. I wish we were talking about anything else but this. I want to talk about your experiences at the school because I don't want this to be an abstraction to people across America. I don't want them to look at this as just something that happens to other people's families, other people's kids. I want them to realize this is real and it affects people. And I'll start with you, Morgan. Take me through the moment that you realized this isn't something you read about in the newspaper. This is happening to me. Take me through that moment.
My teacher was about to start teaching another lesson, and in that moment we started hearing noises, and we all got kind of freaked out. And our first immediate reaction was to run farther away from the noises. So we ran towards the wall where all the windows are in our classroom. But if you look through the door, you can see where we were. So we realized we needed to move to the other side of the classroom. And my teacher told me that there was space in between her desk and my friend Julia. I was under there with her for the whole time. And we were supposed to have a drill like this soon. A teacher said talk to us every single class. They told us what to do in case of a code red and all of those situations. So we all just kept saying, oh, it was a drill. And it was really, really loud. And it sounded like fireworks. So I thought that administration was just, making fireworks go off in the halls to make us think that it was gunshots. And I could hear people in the hallway and in my class crying out for help. And my teacher actually was helping some of the kids who got hurt in my class. And she came back and there was blood all over her clothes. And I could hear people calling for 911.
You said there were actually pieces of the teacher's desk and sawdust and all over your legs. So bullets came in that room.
Yeah.
Lauren, you lost 4 friends and classmates, right?
Yes, I did. These were my friends. I talked to them every day. We discussed what we wanted to do when we grew up. It's just horrible that this was taken away from them.
Well, first let me say I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
You shouldn't have to deal with that.
No, I shouldn't.
That is just not okay. And your classmates, there were texts flying back and forth that people were getting shot.
Some of my closest friends that I was hiding with were getting texts in a group chat, and it was just horrific because first it would be, was that a gunshot? And then second it would be, oh my God, guys, somebody is coming down our hallway, and we hear screaming. And the next thing you know, it would be, they're shooting through our room, there's glass on the floor, I love you guys. And then the next one would be, my teacher's down, something's wrong, I love you guys. And it was just horrific.
What went through your mind when you realized this is real and people are dying around me here?
The first thing that came through my mind is, okay, what am I going to do to make it out of this? What am I going to do to survive? What am I going to do to help people? Throughout my life, my parents have told me, you have to stay calm no matter what's happening. If something like this ever happens, because we watch the news together, you have to stay calm, you have to make a plan in your head, and you have to execute this plan.
David, you recorded on the phone, so your voice would be there if you didn't make it out, right?
Yeah, so when we first got in the classroom, because we were actually running in the direction of the shooter, we didn't realize it at the time, and this janitor said, stop, stop, he's coming this way. And the second that he said that, Chef Ashley Kurth, opened up her room and got in about 65 students into about 100 feet of square space in about 30 seconds, which is remarkable in itself. Yeah. But when I was in there, mind you, I still thought this was a drill. But while I was in there, we started to realize this guy was here to kill people, and this was not a drill. This was life or death. And what I decided to start doing is asking questions to these people so that if our souls were left behind, our voices would echo on.
David began recording video amidst the chaos in case he lost his life. He wanted his voice to go on. Take a look.
We heard that the awful person that created this terrible situation was in the freshman building. It's now 3:13, and we've heard supposedly it's a senior, not confirmed at all. The senior is believed to be named Nick Cruz, but this has not been confirmed. We still believe that the person has been neutralized, but we're still currently on lockdown. Right now, apparently SWAT is clearing people, or we're going to try, if this is true, we'll obviously go with them.
So we made it out.
You have a gun, you dropped it right here.
I'm just glad that all of these people over here are safe.
Wow. I got to just take a minute to say, if you three are a representation of our future, I feel a hell of a lot better. God bless you for having the mind and presence to do what you did. And this is such a major factor in this generation. And it is not just happening in our schools, it's happening on the streets as well. Since 1840, 177 years, there have been 583 people killed in schools and 884 injured. And we took a look at what has happened in terms of street shootings, 2,647 just in 1 year, and injuries 14,356. So this is happening in schools, it's happening on the streets. Something has to happen. Something has to be done. And these young people are not going to let this lie. Now next, she was crammed into a closet with 70 students for 2 hours. Did alleged gunman Nicholas Cruz target the freshman building for a reason? We'll talk about that when we come back. On Valentine's Day, just 1 week ago today, thousands of children entered their high school thinking it was just another day. But before the day was done, 17 people would be dead at the hands of a former student. Now, joining us now via satellite from Florida are Robert, his daughter, Nevaeh, and other Marjory Stoneman Douglas students. Thank you so much for joining us. Robert, let me start with you. You actually got a text from your daughter while she was in the school, correct?
I was actually less than a half mile away from the high school when we received a text from my daughter saying that there's gunshots at my school. At that point, I was in my car, I turned around, and I was at the school within probably 2-3 minutes of the first text. I was getting there as first responders were showing up, and actually got stopped. I was running into the school and a police officer stopped me and said, "Don't go any further, there's a shooting, there's a shooting."
Did you have any idea at that point where your daughter was and what was happening with her?
Yeah, I had my daughter on a group text with me and my wife. I told her, "Nevaeh, you just keep texting me every 30 seconds, just keep texting me." She told me she was locked in a closet. There was about 60, 70 kids in that closet with her.
There was a time when those texts stopped coming, correct?
That is correct. And as a father, as a parent, it was the worst nightmare ever. Other parents were arriving to the school. It was towards the end of the day, so they were on their way to pick up their kids and they were hearing about it. So they were doing the same thing I was doing. It was starting to jam the cell towers. So there would be times where 3, 4, 5 minutes would go by and no text, and I would just be texting, "Nevaeh, you there? Baby, you there? You there? You there?" Nothing. And then 3, 4 minutes later, "I'm okay, I'm still in the closet." And as a parent, when you don't get those texts back, you just think the absolute worst.
And at one point you weren't getting him, it's because they actually started running at one point to escape the situation, right?
SWAT came into their room, got him out, and my phone rang and it was Nevaeh, and I answered it and she says, "Dad, I'm running across the street. I'm out of the school, I'm running."
And you took off running to find her at that point, correct?
My only thought was getting to Nevaeh. At that point, the police had pretty much every road within about a 3-mile radius blocked off. I just took off running around the perimeter. It was about a 3.5-mile sprint, adrenaline running through me to get to the other side of the school where she was at.
Oh. Now, your daughter Nevaeh is right next to you. Nevaeh, do you think that this freshman building was selected on purpose?
I do believe that it makes sense where he chose, just because the rest of our campus is an open campus, and this building is the only building at our school that is more enclosed.
Right, and you were in a closet with, what, 70 other people, is that right?
Yes, I believe so.
And how long were you in there? And tell me what it was like in that closet.
I believe I was in there for around 2 hours, but it was really crowded and jammed and hot.
And tell me, did you have friends that lost their lives in this shooting?
Yes, I did have 2 friends that were close to my heart that passed away, and there was another kid that was in one of my classes that also passed.
There was a coach that you were close to that really helped you a lot, and that coach was taken as well. Can you tell me about the coach?
Oh, he was an amazing guy. I played softball for the previous 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year of high school, and you know, our campus is so big that the softball fields are on the completely other side of where the locker rooms are. And every practice, he would wait for me and a couple other people to get on his golf cart and drive us down there. And it was just, we would have conversations about like everyday things, and it's really heartbreaking to know that he's not going to be there anymore.
Well, listen, as I said to Lauren, I am so sorry for your loss. This is just not something that you should have to go through. And, you know, it's tough enough to lose someone that you care about, but to lose someone suddenly, and then suddenly and violently, is the worst possible shock to your system emotionally and mentally that you can go through. So I'm so sorry for your loss. I think it's just terrible that this has happened to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up.
Joaquin was my student. He had an energy that was contagious about him, and he doesn't get to graduate with his senior class. He was a beautiful kid. I went to his funeral, and he didn't even look like himself.
We are going to change the law. This isn't just a mental health issue. He wouldn't have harmed that many students with a knife.
The gunman, a crazy person, just walks right into the school, knocks down the window of my child's door, and starts shooting her and killing her. President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands.
Well, joining me here on stage are Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School students David, his sister Lauren, and Morgan. And joining by satellite from Florida are a group of students from Parkland, Florida. We're talking to kids that are having to go through losing loved ones to violent death, having to fight for their own lives, and this has to stop. Let me talk to Alexandra for a minute. Alexandra, you too knew 5 people that lost their lives in this shooting, correct?
I knew about 5 of them, yes. There's kids that I have known since 3rd, 2nd, 4th, since elementary school, since I was as long as I can remember. And then I see on Twitter and the news that they're missing, and then later, unfortunately found dead. And it's not, there's no words to describe the feeling, never seeing your friends again. Coach Weiss, he was a great man. Me and so many other students had this tradition, like you pull into the senior lot in the morning and you wave to him and you smile, and it's like your day is not complete without that smile and that wave. And now no student is going to get it, and it's heartbreaking. You can't even begin to think about it.
You said you recently returned to get your car, and your quote was, "It's just not my school anymore." Tell me what you mean by that.
It finally had hit me what had just happened, partially at least, and I felt my heart drop. I immediately started crying. This wasn't Douglas, this is not the school that I go to every morning. This is not my high school. This is some other place, but it's not my high school, and that's what really killed me inside, and it was the hardest moment of my life.
I want to talk to Jack if I could. Jack, you had a friend that was killed. Tell me about your friend.
His name is Joaquin Oliver. I actually wrote something for him, if you don't mind if I read it.
Please.
Well, he always loved Frank Ocean, the artist, and just listening to the album Blonde, which is the reason that we all dyed our hair, and because Joaquin dyed his hair too. One of the most moving things in the song Ivy are the words, "We both know deep down the feeling still deep down is good." And the magnitude of this hit me as I watched my friend the day I write this, February 17th, and waited for him to open his eyes again. The feeling is good because this is the end. The anguish and pain in the faces of Parkland's people will be the final time this is experienced. And the support that we have been giving and receiving from everybody is everything to our community and our family, and it must be represented on a national scale. Frank Ocean also said, "We'll never be those kids again." Those words rattled me to the core. The maturity and strength with which we are making our voices heard proves we are ready for the future, yet unable to ever be those same kids again. Together, in every victim's name, we must come together as a family, as a country. I love you all. I always will, because you are the reason we want to change the future.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Alicia, you're a teacher at the school. You teach Spanish there. That was particularly hard for you to hear. Tell me why.
Joaquin was my student his freshman year of high school. He was a beautiful kid. He had an energy that was contagious about him. Here he is, a senior, and he doesn't get to graduate with a senior class. He just became a naturalized U.S. citizen 3 months ago. He would always walk by my room and say, "Profe, I love you." And I went to his funeral, and he didn't even look like himself. I'm just so angry.
Well, it's been nearly 19 years since shots rang out at Columbine High School in Colorado. Now, 12 students and 1 teacher died that day at the hands of 2 students armed with a hit list and a cache of automatic weapons. Now, hundreds of students and teachers survived, but every time there is another school shooting, it makes it seem like only yesterday to some of them. Well, we're going to talk to 2 of those Columbine survivors after the break and hear what they have to say to all of these students. We'll be right back.
There is still confusion over why students Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris decided to murder their schoolmates.
The FBI told you that you were on the hit list that they had?
Yes, there was a hit list, and I was on that.
Closed captioning provided by These days, it seems like the news and social media are rife with images and harrowing stories of school shootings. But 19 years ago, when Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris entered Columbine High School with an arsenal of weapons and explosives, the crises were just beginning.
2 students wearing long black trench coats, heavily armed with automatic weapons, pistols, and homemade explosive devices, opened fire on classmates yesterday morning.
There's a shooting in the library right now.
This is just dozens and dozens of students that are fleeing for safety.
It appears that some of the bodies were underneath desks and underneath boxes or cubicles, possibly, yes, that they were trying to hide from the ongoing assault that was happening.
They were stalking throughout the school, looking for possible victims.
By the time the shooting was over, 15 people were dead, scores more injured.
The 2 suspects appear to have died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds at this time.
There is still confusion over why students Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris decided to murder their schoolmates.
Physically, I'm fine, but emotionally, it'll be hard.
Well, joining me are 2 Columbine High School shooting survivors, Katie and Amy. And I really thank you guys for being here and talking about this. When these school shootings happen now, it's been 19 years, what effect, if any, does this have on the 2 of you?
It affects me terribly. I'm now a mother of 2, and I send them into this environment that I feel isn't safe. It's a struggle every day to send them off to school.
Yeah, and in fact, the FBI, I believe, came to your home after the fact and told you that you were on the hit list that they had?
Yes, apparently there was a hit list, and I was on that.
Do you have any idea why? Do you know what your...
There were speculations of maybe they were targeting jocks, and I was an athlete. I played basketball, but I never bullied them or anything of that nature. So.
Right. Did you know them well?
I knew of them. I had classes with both of them throughout high school. So I was a senior in high school when it happened.
Yeah. And Katie, since this has happened, as we say, it's been 19 years, this has had a profound effect on you, right? Tell me about it.
Especially when another shooting happens, it brings it all back. It's re-victimizing all over again. You relate to the sounds, the emotions. You're square one again. It
You're
like
right back
resets
there.
my progress.
And you've struggled with alcohol.
Yes.
Is that self-medication? Is that how it started?
It definitely was. I had struggled with drugs for a while, and that was something that I overcame on my own and drank socially. Once I had my son, I couldn't handle my own grief and my own struggles, let alone try to deal with raising a small human being. It was too much pressure, and I drank through it.
And you said you felt a lot of guilt since then. Tell me why.
Survivor's guilt is the sort of thing I didn't anticipate, where you don't feel worthy. It's like, why did I make it? What was my purpose? Why was it them and not me?
And you said at the time when you were scattering that you ran away from a friend.
Yeah. Well, when the shooting happened, we thought it was fireworks. Same thing they said. We thought it was senior pranks. And so the door closest to me, when the kids from the cafeteria had come running upstairs to our room, I ran the other way towards the door to get to the auditorium, and my best friend sat in the chair, and I went right by her. And she wasn't injured, but what she saw was terrible. What she went through was terrible. And had I thought beyond myself to grab her, maybe she'd be in a different position too. You know, the instinct was to save myself, and I was raised to help other people, and none of that happens. None of that kicked in. It shows you your true colors, and that isn't who I wanted to be at that moment. And I've carried that for a long time.
Well, I think you might be being a little harsh on yourself here, but have you had any of those feelings?
Yes. I went through, I was under a table for quite some time trying to figure out how I was going to survive getting out of the school. When I was running out of the school, I shielded myself with my peers as I was getting shot at. So I had tremendous survivor's guilt for years, that I was just trying to protect myself, and it was survival instincts, but survivor's guilt is the worst feeling.
And you say your coach died saving your life.
He basically was kind of on a platform like this, overlooking the cafeteria, and I was under a table, and he was telling us where the shooters were, when to run. So essentially, he saved my life, because I wouldn't have known I was under a table. He put himself in harm's way to make sure that we got out safely. And then he ran up the stairs to tell other people. So he definitely is my hero.
So he was traffic copping and telling people when to go.
Stay away from the windows, get down, there's a shooter. And, you know, being his student and as one of his athletes, I knew how serious it was.
Okay, next, what Katie and Amy want to tell Parkland survivors to keep them from going through some of these same struggles they've endured. That's after the break. Closed captioning provided by Well, 19 years ago, two students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, entered Columbine High School and mercilessly shot dead 12 of their fellow students and one teacher. Now, no one could have imagined that tragedy would reoccur hundreds of times, becoming an almost regular occurrence. Now, joining me are two former Columbine students who survived the attack and say the recent school shooting in Parkland brings the memories of that tragic day rushing back and seeming all too real. If you had advice for these survivors, things that you would do different if you had to do over again, things that you would recommend that they do, what would it be?
Well, first and foremost, I want to tell your community and you children that I'm so proud of you. and proud of your voices, and we are in awe of your strength, and you give us strength every day. So that is what keeps us going. Please take care of yourselves. It's a journey that you're going to go through for the rest of your life, and I'm so sorry. But you guys will persevere, and you will be stronger from this, and just be kind to yourself.
You know, when you see someone as young as Lauren here, who's 14, and
I was your age when I went through my shooting, so I feel a connection to you. I wish I could take your pain away. And we love you.
Thank you so much.
you started something called Rebel Project.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Some of our peers, after the Aurora Theater shooting, started a group called the Rebels Project, and we are a platform, social media primarily, but we also go out into the communities, and we connect with survivors. So we have communities all over the country, actually all over the world, who have gone through mass shootings, and it's a safe place for you to come and talk. And there's someone that you can connect with on all levels. The cost is high to be in our club. It's a club none of us wanted to be in.
Ashton, you actually saw 2 classmates die. What do you say to yourself about that?
It's just so traumatizing. Like, my whole class, we're trying to help each other through this. Like, we're all linking up, like, in a whole group chat. We're all talking to each other. If anyone needs anything, we're all with each other. We just want to make sure everyone lets everything out and is okay.
Well, Kelly, when all this was going on, you were on the phone with 911 for 14 minutes. Tell me what was going through your mind for that 14 minutes, and what information were you giving them?
I was telling them that there was a school shooter, and she kept asking me, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes," because that's after he started shooting into our classroom. So I was telling her that we hear him walking around and talking to himself, and my teacher thought maybe it was someone coming to help, and I asked the dispatch lady if the police were in there. She said, "No, nobody's in there yet. They're all just surrounding the building."
Anything you want to say to these children? Anything you want to say to these children?
I think whatever you guys need, advocate for yourselves. One of the biggest regrets I have is people telling me this is normal to feel this way. It's okay to feel this way. And might be normal temporarily, but long term it wasn't. And the longer you let it go, it manifests into way bigger things. If you get into therapy and you don't like your therapist, find someone else. You're not stuck with the first one. And don't ever give up.
As an American, we all need to realize this is not normal. We can't accept this. We were learning about it in AP Psychology literally like a day ago before the shooting, and it's something called learned helplessness. Now is the time that we have to take action so we prevent as many as possible from happening again. I don't think it needs to be a political thing. I think it needs to be something about lives.
I'm glad you bring that up, because the learned helplessness that he's referring to is a perceptual set where you come to believe that there's nothing you can do to affect the outcome. So you stop trying. You just accept it. And we can't get in that position. And I said in the discussion we had yesterday that there comes a point where you have to stop yelling and being strident politically and say, we've got to come up with a solution here. You always start out any negotiation by saying, let's talk about what we can agree on. What we can agree on is we want to create a safe environment for our kids on the streets and in the schools, and what does it take to get that? I think people need to stop talking about repealing the Second Amendment, because that's not going to happen. So if you're not going to change the amendment that says people have the right to bear arms, then you need to say, okay, that right comes with responsibilities. Is it commonsensical for any reason? Does someone need to be able to purchase a firearm that can throw out that much death, that much lead in that short a period of time. In this situation, we had a young man that encountered Nicholas Cruz face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and he said, and I quote, "You need to get out of here, this is going to get messy." He did not shoot him. Why did he not shoot him? We don't know. Is it possible that because he had to look him in the eye and deal with him as a person, he didn't want to do that? He said, "You need to get out of here." But you can impersonally shoot someone down the hall. You don't have to deal with him as an individual up close and personal. And I can tell you from a mental health standpoint, we don't have the ability, we don't have the tools to screen these people and predict who's going to become a shooter and who's not. There has been profiling done by the FBI, the Secret Service, and a number of other organizations, and they are actually contradictory. One says 34% are loners, another says 1/2 are in the mainstream, and another says 78% are marginalized.
How do we listen to each other and not get further divided, but have this discussion?
Commit to the fact that we want the same thing. Then all of a sudden, we're all trying to push the same rock up the same hill, and we're not on different sides of the issue, we're on the same side of the issue. What seems to make the most common sense is place surveillance rather than individual surveillance. There are 336 million Americans, and so you may be looking for a needle in a haystack, but there might be several 100,000 schools or collection zones, and you can come a whole lot closer to protecting the zones where it's likely to happen than you can finding the needle in the haystack. So what does the community of Parkland, Florida do now? Where do they go from here once the media dies down and they're left alone? We'll be right back. Closed captioning provided by... You know, during the aftermath of such a tragic event, bonding carries the day. The real problem happens when the media lights flip off and the victims are left with their injuries or their grief, and the world seems to have moved on to the next headline. Depression can take over, and a life once full of passion and purpose can feel very much adrift. Now that's what each and every one of us need to resolve to not let happen. If you know anyone connected with a tragic event like in Parkland, write in your calendar a reminder that every week or 2 weeks you're going to reach out, and if you wonder, if you debate with yourself whether you should bring it up or leave well enough alone, let me answer that for you. Don't wonder, bring it up. Because let me tell you, it really matters if you come up and just put a hand on their shoulder and say, "I'm still thinking about you." Above all, help them. Help yourself. And here's how you do that. Find meaning to your suffering. With meaning comes change, growth, and a better tomorrow than we had yesterday. And that's what I'm seeing these young people at this high school do. They're saying, look, this isn't going to just happen and then it goes away. We're going to create meaning from this suffering. These people are not going to die in vain. And I'm going to use my bright lights and my cameras to give them a platform until they get it done. I want to thank all of my guests today. Our prayers go out to those who lost loved ones and all of those that are still recovering. I will not forget about this. Don't you forget about it either. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
I need a sign to let me know you're here. All of these lines are being crossed over the atmosphere.